It's been a bad year for poor people inadvertently occupying desirable beachfront property. It would appear that acquisitive eyes have recently turned towards Gaza, where the rubble of Palestinian homes rests on valuable real estate, overlooking the sapphire blue waters of the Mediterranean Sea. US President Joe Biden's proposed port construction on the coast there, ostensibly to enable delivery of humanitarian aid, will apparently be built in part with that rubble. Rubble salted with the bones of Gazan men, women and children, tens of thousands of them killed so far in the war described as plausible genocide by the International Court of Justice. Any of it might be bulldozed into the sea as foundations for that new harbour, giving convenient access to that open-air prison. That's some monument in prospect, buried at sea. At a special meeting of the Knesset Foreign Affairs and Defence Committee, Benjamin Netanyahu is reported to have said that that port can facilitate the exit of Palestinians from Gaza. So the military operations in Gaza are either about making war on terror or preparing the ground for brownfield development, or perhaps both. Who could say? Gaza has been inhabited for thousands of years. President Joe Biden and his rival Donald Trump are both older, however, than the modern state of Israel. But that's just a detail of the unimaginably long timeline of that ancient, tortured landscape. In any event, in the modern world, everything of note is just business. Jared Kushner, son-in-law of President Donald J. Trump and sometime senior policy advisor to that president on matters Middle Eastern, spoke at Harvard University in February. Quote, "Gaza's waterfront property could be very valuable." Kushner lamented the money spent building the tunnels under Gaza and said it could have been better used instead for education and innovation. Quote, "It's a little bit of an unfortunate situation there, but from Israel's perspective, I would do my best to move the people out and clean it up." He said he didn't think Israel had publicly stated it didn't want the locals to move back towards their former homes, but he said that if he was in charge of Israel, his number one priority would be moving Gazans out of the southern city of Rafah, and that it might be possible to shovel those displaced souls, already displaced more often in one lifetime than a person might count, onto a spot somewhere in the Negev desert in southern Israel. Quote, "I would just bulldoze something in the Negev," he said. "I would try to move the people in there. I think that's the better option, so you can go in and finish the job." I'm not picking on Kushner particularly. He just happened to be recorded speaking the truth out loud. What he said at Harvard is what many others think anyway. Clear out the Gaza Strip, ready for something else, someone else. Business is business, and in the property business, as we have learned to say, it's all about location, location, location. It's not just the ruins of the Middle East that offer opportunity for men and women of fertile imagination and iron will. Before Westerners arrived in Hawaii, the place was a sovereign kingdom with its capital at Lahaina on the Emerald Island of Maui. Last year, the worst US wildfire in a century incinerated the place, killing around 100 people and destroying at a stroke 3% of the island's housing stock, much of it featuring the sort of sea views and beach access desired by some of the world's wealthiest people. Native Hawaiian residents, working class among them, had fought for decades to resist development, but in a matter of hours, they lost everything anyway. In the aftermath, they were displaced, but while their homes were gone, their mortgages were not, and those still had to be repaid. Many struggled in all sorts of ways, taking refuge in all sorts of temporary accommodation. Suicide rates went up. There was a spike in the number of calls to a hotline for victims of domestic violence. Many also fear big-time developers will move in on Lahaina and build the kind of luxury homes and condos they cannot afford. Many questions remain about the Maui fire, how it started, how it was handled or mishandled. Many wonder who will buy those latter-day palaces. Business is business, and now, out of the mouths of individuals like Kushner, we hear it clearly said. War is business too, indeed a racket, according to Major General Smedley Butler, that most decorated US Marine, who said war was no more and no less than the oldest, most profitable and most vicious racket of them all. A racket being the business of organised crime, of organised criminals. And now in the 21st century, we see the business of war, the racket of war, exposed in all its whorish splendour as never before. The war in Ukraine is also for profit, of course. Hundreds of billions of dollars, pounds and euros worth of profit for Boeing, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman and the rest of the international arms industry and everyone else with access to the great money laundry service that is Ukraine. From Washington to London to Paris and back again, the cash tills are ringing. The human traffickers are making record profits too in Ukraine, in borderless America. Money, money everywhere, unless you're poor. And then there's the prospect of hundreds of billions more profit for the big business interests standing ready and willing to harvest the proceeds of the inevitable rebuild of shattered Ukraine, down 500,000 citizens and counting. Think of all the vacated properties there, the brownfield sites ripe for do-overs, not to mention the exploitation of the shale oil and the fortunes to be made from the richest farmland in Europe. I wonder just who has snapped up those prospects, who is waiting patiently in the wings, ready to set to with more bulldozers and drill rigs and the rest. Where there's muck and blood, there's brass. The West has already lost the Ukraine war in every way that matters, even if the likes of Emmanuel Macron of France continue to sabre-rattle to pretend otherwise. It's all just business. War-torn lands are also lands of opportunity for those with money to invest and profits to recoup, all of which explains why businessmen and the politicians who work for them, finding it uncomfortable, all the brightly lit exposure of their recent dealings to the scrutiny of millions of ordinary people enabled by the internet and independent journalists and social media, are presently moving heaven and earth to take full control of that other 21st century business, that business that, as well as enabling the sharing of truth, also promises wealth beyond the dreams of avarice, which is to say the information business, which is also the control of information, and so the censoring and silencing of inconvenient truth. Most recently, it's the video hosting platform TikTok that has been the subject of scrutiny, attracting the attention of avaricious types excited by the prospect of acquiring control of it, acquiring, more to the point perhaps, the ability to silence and censor its contents. TikTok is in large part the chosen platform of the young, and right now the young are making it plain they don't approve, not one little bit, of what's happening in Gaza. Generation Z and the rest, young American Jews among them, want the killing of Gazans to stop, using TikTok to share tens of millions of messages and videos about how furious they are, how much sympathy they have with the people of Gaza and Palestine. As well as about business and money, the aggressive move on TikTok is about control of the narrative. The antipathy of the US and others in the West towards TikTok is not new. It's been years now. In 2022, Meta, parent company of Facebook, sought to discredit its rival as a proxy for the Chinese Communist Party, alleging TikTok was washing American brains in Chinese propaganda. Nothing came of it, though. Influential voices in the US spoke in defence of free speech and the First Amendment. Many suggest it's only since the events beginning on October 7th that the anti-TikTok sentiment has suddenly become the focus not just of the US President and his administration, but of bipartisan support, Republican and Democrat, for seizing control of the platform. And so last week, the House of Representatives passed a bill demanding the sale of TikTok to a company in the US. Failure to submit, failure to do so, would incur a US national ban of the platform. The bill is yet to pass the Senate, but the die is surely cast, paving the way for the US President, to designate as threats to national security any non-US social media, any such apps, not just TikTok, but all social media apps with ties to any nation state the US decides is an enemy would have 6 months to sever that tie. It's no exaggeration to say that if the bill passes, then all at once any notions of the freedom of the internet will be undone and erased in the US. So much for the First Amendment. The government will have awarded itself the ability to censor, not misinformation, but the truth, only increasing its power over coverage of whatever happens next. There's no disguising what's really going on, what it's really all about. It's about money and the control money buys. It's about the centralising of power in all its forms, the pursuit of profit facilitated by war, by the abuse of people. Abuse without consequences is a filthy, rotten business, and it stinks to high heaven. It certainly doesn't look good when the necessary dealings are exposed for all to see. Here's the thing, any righteousness the West ever had is dead, a corpse of a thing. You can put lipstick and perfume on it, but it's still ugly and it still stinks. The powerful care not a jot for democracy, for the rights and freedom of the people. They care about money, control and power. And so now the necessity for the powerful is to take ultimate control once and for all of the information, which means taking control of the internet. This week it's TikTok, but that's just the template for something bigger, something all-encompassing. If they succeed, then it's game over.